Well, the pot shop here in Kensington Market is still considered illegal, along with the 57 others still operating in our city. And as we wait for word from the province as to how recreational marijuana will be sold in Ontario, what happens in the meantime, and what does this all mean for Toronto moving forward?
As far as the raids go, yeah, I guess it's a little scary, but I think that's all going to subside once the legislation comes through.
Christine, a mother of two, is looking forward to the legislation. Her family lives in the Queen West neighborhood of Trinity Bellwoods, where there are 3 pot shops within a city block.
I think it's going to change the culture as far as it won't be so clandestine, and there won't be, gangs running around selling pot and dealers and stuff like that, which I think is a really positive move for Canada.
Over the last year, we have seen dozens of dispensaries raided by police, 5 locations of cannabis culture, an entire chain created by the so-called Prince and Princess of Pot has now officially shut down. At one point, there were at least 110 pot shops in Toronto. Today, the city tells me only 58 are still in business. We've also seen a spike in crime. We were the first to report on a string of armed robberies happening at these dispensaries where shots were being fired and people hurt. So will police be enforcing existing laws now that actual legislation is on the table?
The dispensaries desperately want people to believe that there's currently a gray area in the law. There isn't. The law is absolutely clear, and unless you're licensed by the federal government, if you're selling cannabis, you're breaking the law. When the law changes, we'll adapt the way in which we police, but while it remains illegal, we will continue to enforce the law.
And what about Toronto? Will we be cashing in? Those who have traveled look to Amsterdam as a marijuana model to emulate. On the streets here, many are under the impression that the massive amount of revenue recreational pot is expected to produce will be trickling down to our city.
My goodness, there's just, the city is looking for money anywhere and everywhere, so taxes and hydro and water, it's up and up and up and up, right?
And while Mayor John Tory says there is no obligation to share the cash flow, he will make sure we're not being left high and dry.
Not only do we want some share of the revenues, but we want to make sure, even if we don't get that the costs that are imposed upon us in terms of policing and other things are in some way taken account of and accommodated, because this wouldn't be fair to have happen yet again, which happens, it seems, almost daily around here, that the other governments are happy to sort of pass off responsibilities to us to carry out services and do things and not pass off any of the money that goes with it.
Well, even though federal pot legislation is finally on the table, Toronto police tell us they will continue to enforce existing laws and will regroup when changes finally officially come into effect. And so what that means is that dispensaries like the one behind me here in Kensington Market are still considered illegal. Now, one big question right now that still has to be answered is how will Ontario regulate the sale of marijuana? Today, I had a chat with Mark Emery, the so-called Prince of Pot, and he believes that the free market is the best way to do this. If you could talk to the Premier right now, how would you like her, what would you tell her about how to proceed from here?
The Solicitor General should stop arresting people immediately for possession, for selling, for all of it. They should come up with a regulatory regime for all of Ontario that allows for peaceful selling, distribution, and they should do it as soon as possible in as free market as possible. The difficulty in this legislation is that they want to tighten access, restrict it, and all these terms suggest that the supply will be choked off and that prices will be high. Now, the government has an incentive to keep prices high, so their taxes are high. But in the real free market, production would increase, the legality is open, and therefore the price should plummet to $1 and $2 a gram. But the government would get much fewer taxation revenue that way, and that's a problem. When the government wants tax money, they won't let the free market operate because the price should plummet.
Okay, so you say the free market's the best way to go?
Oh, without question, it's the only way to go.
No, Emery says that provinces like Quebec are much more likely to take the free market route, and that's because they've been selling alcohol in grocery and convenience stores for decades.